Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into some seriously fascinating source material today from a text called A Treatise on White Magic. Now, don't let the title fool you. This isn't some abstract floating philosophy. It is a massive, radical paradigm shift regarding where we actually get our truth. Today, we're exploring this wild idea of a teacher who literally refuses to be followed and how that ancient wisdom holds the absolute key to reclaiming your own inner authority right now.
Okay, let's dive into this with a pretty simple question. Who holds your truth? It sounds simple, right? But I really want you to stop and reflect on this for a second. In your daily life, where are you currently seeking permission? Like when you're facing a huge decision, or just trying to figure out what's right or wrong, whose voice is actually the loudest in your head? Is it yours, or is it somebody else's? We live in a world that constantly tells us to look outside of ourselves for the answers, and today we're going to challenge that habit head-on.
To really get why this matters so much, we've got to look at the 2026 digital landscape we're navigating right now. We are living smack in the middle of what we could call the guru economy. Think about it. Algorithms literally reward our dependence. We sit around waiting for a beautifully packaged TikTok or some 10-step framework to tell us what we honestly already sense deep down. We're essentially being sold certainty in exchange for our independence. But on the flip side, you have this esoteric concept of unmediated inner truth. This points us entirely towards self-reliance. It's about inner verification and developing what the text calls soul contact. It's pretty much the exact opposite of the guru economy.
Which brings us to Section 1, the modern authority trap. You see, this whole outsourcing thing, it's not just a modern problem caused by smartphones. It's a really ancient trap. Modern seekers are just falling into new versions of that old habit, outsourcing our discernment to someone we think is higher up the ladder. So, who is the voice dismantling this in our source text? Enter Master Jwal Khul, also widely known as the Tibetan, but we'll just call him DK for short. DK is the narrative of our text, but what makes him so incredibly unique is his absolute refusal to be put on a pedestal. I mean, he explicitly downplays his own rank. He describes himself as merely a senior student, just a guy who's climbed a little bit higher up the mountain and can maybe describe the view a little better. It is highly, highly unusual for an esoteric teacher to speak like this and literally refuse to be blindly followed. Moving on to Section 2, the anonymous teacher. Now, what's really interesting about this is DK's deliberate choice to remain totally hidden.
DK didn't just casually tell people not to worship him. He actively hid his identity to make it flat out impossible. And this wasn't an accident. It was a highly calculated teaching mechanism. Just listen to the gravity of this quote straight from the text. I have deliberately preserved my anonymity. This is no evasion. It is a precise and necessary safeguard. Think about that word for a second, safeguard. His anonymity isn't just some quirky historical footnote about how the book was published. The anonymity is the core teaching itself. It's a safeguard engineered to force the reader to evaluate the idea completely on its own merits, totally divorced from the personality of the person sharing it.
Let's break down exactly why this anonymity works so incredibly well. First, it completely prevents blind devotion to a personality, because, well, you can't worship a faceless source, right? Second, it forces you to evaluate the actual idea itself. And third, it acts as a brilliant teaching tool against outsourcing your discernment. And here is the modern bridge application we absolutely need to grasp today. If we can't evaluate an idea without knowing exactly who said it, or how many followers they have, or what their credentials are, then we are still trapped. We are still totally outsourcing our truth to an external authority.
That leads us to Section 3, Dangers of Blind Obedience.
The source material outlines these historical dangers not just as some dry history lesson, but as an urgent, flashing warning light for us today. DK identifies a very specific mentality that has plagued earnest seekers for literally centuries. He calls it out right in the text, mentioning the whispered word, the master says, the great one's command. He describes this mentality as a literal curse. It has narrowed and imprisoned eager, well-meaning aspirants throughout history. People just stop thinking for themselves the absolute second they hear the master says, and instead, they just blindly conform.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real pitfalls of relying on outer authority. Misplaced devotion, seeking convenient shortcuts to truth, surrendering your personal discernment, and ultimately, blind obedience. Seekers just tumble blindly over themselves trying to find a shortcut. You know the thought process. Hey, if I just drop $500 on this expert's masterclass, I won't have to figure it out myself. But DK is telling us loud and clear that taking someone else's word for it isn't a shortcut to truth, it's a dead end.
Let's shift inward for Section 4, the soul as authority.
So if we can't rely on external obedience, and if there's no hierarchical principle standing behind these pages demanding our compliance, there has to be a different mediator. We have to shift our focus entirely inward. In the context of DK's teachings, we need to define what the soul actually is, because this isn't just a vague, poetic concept here. The text defines the soul as the mediating principle between spirit and matter. And more importantly for us today, it's presented as the absolute only valid authority that will never, ever mislead you. The soul is practical. It's your ultimate internal verification system.
So the crucial point is perfectly captured in this really striking passage from the text. DK says, "What I say of truth alone is of moment. The inspiration I may offer is only valuable insofar as it quickens what already stirs within you." He's basically grabbing the reader by the shoulders and saying, "Turn not toward me, but inward." A true teaching doesn't shove something brand new inside you. It simply awakens what you already possess. If a teaching doesn't resonate with your own internal soul contact, DK is suggesting you absolutely shouldn't just blindly accept it.
To really cement this, consider the huge contrast between the wrong way and the right way to use these teachings. The wrong way? Treating them as mere intellectual accumulation, like hoarding facts or using them as a basis for a blind devotion to a teacher. The right way is using these teachings as practical, everyday tools for developing your own soul contact, and then expressing that connection in your daily life and in service to others. The entire goal is action and inner alignment. It's definitely not just passing some trivia test on esoteric philosophy.
All right, Section 5, this week's practice. Let's land the plane. Let's bring these 20th century esoteric concepts straight into your daily routine for this week. The foundational rule for your practice is super simple. Test every single teaching against your own experience. Remember, you are the hero of this journey. You can't afford to be a passive consumer of information anymore. You've got to become your own inner scientist. If an expert says something, test it. If a spiritual teacher claims something, run it straight through the laboratory of your own lived experience. To help with that, here is a highly actionable 3-step challenge I want you to try every morning this week. Step 1. Notice when you defer to an outer source. Catch yourself in the act when you're about to blindly trust a guru, follow a trend, or rely on an expert without even thinking. Step 2. Pause. Just stop for a second and create a little bit of space. Step 3. Ask yourself this specific question. What do I actually discern here, completely independent of that authority? This is exactly how you spot that modern habit of waiting for outer permission. You learn to separate the message from the messenger, and you check it directly against your own soul.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave this provocative question just hanging in the air for you. Where in your own life do you wait for outer permission before trusting what you inwardly know? Guys, it is time to stop outsourcing your truth. It's time to stop waiting for an algorithm or some shiny expert to validate you. Step into your own inner authority. Trust your internal verification and start testing the truth for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I highly, highly encourage you to carry this question with you for the rest of the week.